Experts like Jordan Peterson and Richard Cooper all say that cohabitation with your relationship partner is a bad idea. But what if cohabitating could actually help your relationship and maybe even save your relationship? We're going to blow the lid off this one. All right, everybody, welcome to the Apex Underground Podclass. So, we're going to talk about cohabitation. This has been asked about several times by a couple different people. Some of y'all hopped on and asked about it, So some people feel very strongly about it, like Kevin here. Don't cohabitate, it ruined my life. Right? Sorry, Kevin. I don't mean to laugh at you. Yeah, but that sucks. All right. But see, I don't know if cohabitation actually ruined your life. I think the relationship and everything else surrounding it was probably a temporary ruin. Hopefully, you've gotten yourself back on track from that situation. But so we have guys like Jordan Peterson who says, not to cohabitate, but he's talking about prior to marriage. So there's a traditional conservative angle and feeling about cohabitation, which is I got exposed to that quite a bit myself, and in that sort of ideology. We'll touch on that. Guys like my good friend, I need to shoot him a message because he's a great guy and he has a great show over at Entrepreneurs and Cars. If you in Richard Cooper, most of you guys know who he is if you watch me, and he advises completely against cohabitation, right? And I don't think he's wrong in his advice either. However, what you're going to find is it's going to depend on the situation, relationship, and the lifestyle that you're trying to build. And there are situations where cohabitation is not just like some sort of sacrifice that you have to do in order to have this life that you want, but it's actually a benefit. And so I'm going to teach you how cohabitation can be a benefit, as well as we'll talk about when it's not a benefit and when it's bad. And that would fall in line with a lot of the mainstream advice that's saying cohabitation is bad. Because I don't know, like it seems it's an interesting topic because most people live together with their relationship partners at some point, whether they get a marriage contract or not. And most people, I think, statistically end up moving in together prior to a marriage contract. All right. So that's something that people are doing. Yet, if you look on the internet for advice on cohabitation, it seems like most of the advice that will pop up in your search feed is going to be why and how you shouldn't cohabitate, most of it. So it's an interesting topic. Most guys in like red pill space, all this will tell you never to do it. Don't do it. Don't cohabitate. Yet most people do it anyway. Right. So there just seems to be a cognitive dissonance on this topic. You know what I mean? But we're going to address it, so, but we'll cover a couple of housekeeping things first. So I changed the format again. You guys notice, Apex Underground Podclass. So this channel, if you're here, you guys are my, you guys are kind of part of my, I'll say inner circle, but like more or less you guys are, congratulations. You guys are in the know. All right. If you came across my material somewhere, you're either very lucky or you got it recommended someplace else. This channel is just relatively more or less doxed. So I have Apex Inner Game, which is putting out more higher quality. We could call it inclusive without any negative connotation of the word type of content that is going to be designed for, all listeners. But I want to, it's going to be good stuff over there. I have I've talked about Frame before. I have a master class on Frame that's dropping there today at 3 p.m. So, if you guys, want to help me, support me, that would be cool. Is obviously support this channel as best as you can, regardless of it sort of being, more or less doxed. But go over to that. In fact, let me see if that's try to I'm going to try to find the the link to it, but go it should be in the show notes, but go to yeah, here we go. Yeah, so I'm going to share it. I'm share it right in the chat for you. Today at 3 o'clock, there's a premiere for my frame masterclass, and there are a series of short, higher quality videos that'll be dropping on that channel, and we'll be doing more stuff over there. So this is going to be more of a podcast or pod class format. This is where I get to interact with you guys in the chat, answer your questions, that sort of thing, and cover topics a little bit deeper. But of course, it's unscripted. It's not quite as short form and, to the point, and that's all that. But this is more for us to interact together, give you guys some good advice, have some discussions, maybe even some debates, whatever it may be. And I don't really give a shit anymore about algorithms. I'm not going to just be intentionally divisive or anything like that, but I don't care about necessarily whether YouTube likes this channel or not. We already know it doesn't, so I don't give a fuck anymore. It's this is all about you guys here. So if you're here, it's all about you. It's not all about what fits algorithms or what fits mainstream thinking. I don't care about that. I'm going to get you guys the stuff, get you guys the stuff that is going to help you. All right. And it may not be mainstream. It may not be popular, may be challenging to your worldview. For this whole idea of cohabitation is challenging to some people's worldview, and so some people are like, I tried that and it didn't work, and now I hate anything involving cohabitation, right? So there's a lot of very, very strong opinions about this. And so we're going to kind of get into all those. So yeah, cohabitations, experts, let's start with the traditional conservative stuff. All right. So when you look at, kind of the Jordan Peterson, speeches about not cohabitating, it's about not doing it before marriage. Here's the problem with the traditional conservative angle. All right. Is that the traditional conservative myth is that they think that marriage is permanent. It's not. Okay. Now I know I just violated a lot of safe world theories for a lot of Christians right now, or, potentially any of the big three, Judeo-Christians religions, right? Because the idea is that somehow you say the magic words before the Lord, and now it's permanent. It's like one-itis, right? Doesn't exist. It's a myth. It's not really true. All right. A woman reserves the right to change her mind at any point. And as soon as she changes her mind and finds you not of use anymore, in that regard, she can terminate or end the relationship. That's the way it is. Okay. There is no permanence in marriage. It may be more difficult to get unentangled once you entangle resources, finance, paperwork, government, that sort of thing. But it's not impossible, and people do it all the time. And the fact of the matter is, women are more likely. Now, this does not mean all women. This does not mean your specific woman that you're dealing with. Okay. But in general, women are more likely to not have principles and break their commitments, to break their vows. Why? I mean, 70% of divorces are initiated by women. So that is a fact. That's not fiction. Okay. So you as a man going into a contract with somebody, you have over 50%, approaching 60% chance of it not working. And chances are she's going to be one to break that contract. You can be as dedicated as you want as a man, and you could believe in the permanence of marriage all you want. She doesn't. All right. And I would argue that her monkey brain doesn't. Okay. She's, if a marriage is no longer serving her transactional needs, as well as, you want to go past that and be into desire and those other needs that she's hoping to achieve through a marriage. She's lost the desire. She's lost the attraction. She's lost those things, and the transactional needs could be met without you, chances are that's going away. And now you're married, living together, have everything entangled. Well, you're going to lose it. So when a guy tells me, don't cohabitate or ruin my life, I mean, well, there's probably other aspects to that story, but it's when she decided the guy was no longer of use, or the juice wasn't worth the squeeze transactionally for her. She lost attraction. She lost desire. There wasn't the frame. She's not in frame. What happens? She takes her ball and leaves and looks for a better opportunity. And that will disassemble and destroy her life temporarily, at least, if you're cohabitating. That's a bad idea, right? That'd be a bad idea. And so, but this traditional conservative myth is that this marriage contract is, marriage is this permanent thing. It's like one-itis. It's like you find the one magic person that you're supposed to be with. This is the fate. We're supposed to be together. It's my magical partner. And then you say the magic words, in front of your family, in front of the Lord, in front of whatever, and abracadabra, alakazam, hallelujah. You're together forever now. Unless you somehow like really, try to turn away from your vows. But as long as you stick to the, church and your vows, you're together forever. Nope. Doesn't work that way. That's a myth. That is a safe world theory. Marriage is a safe world theory. The assumption that is if I get married, then I'm going to have a magical relationship that lasts and that's happy and that satisfies me. All those things, not true. Okay. It's just not true. A lot of people, and this is the kind of shit that gets me, gets YouTube not to like me, I guess, right? Because people freak out, whatever. I don't care. I don't care. And I'm not saying don't get married, because there's ways of getting married where you can protect yourself depending on what state you're in and depending on what part of the world you're in. Okay. There's reasons to get married that, I can understand and appreciate. It's not today's not a discussion about that because we'll get in the weeds, but the idea that it's a permanent, situation or conclusion because of magic words or because of vows or because of beliefs or because of God even, right? That's not true. It's not true. Okay. And so that's the first thing, getting that idea out of your head. So like people who cohabit, the reason why there's a lot of possible reasons. We don't know if exactly, but you look at like marriage studies, people who cohabitate tend to be more likely to get divorced. That's in the research. And so, and then there's the religious belief of, not to live in sin and not to live with your partner with the appearance of sin and all this before being married, all that stuff. Look, there's some truth. Obviously, the statistics are real. There's some truth to some of these things, but the belief around marriage is not what it used to be. To include with a girl you're dealing with, no matter what she says, no matter what she tells you, okay, the chances are is that her social conditioning and paradigm around marriage is not the same as it was, 50, 100 years ago when some of these values were ascribed. Okay. And we're sort of, I mean, before that, of course, but when these were stuck to and when these are idealized, when divorce was taboo, divorce is not taboo anymore. Like you've lost the social leverage. Because understand, like with women, there's not just principles. Okay. Women tend not to go just on principles. They tend to be more pragmatic. Is it working for me right now? And how do I feel about it? And I'm not to say that women can't have principles, because there's plenty of women who don't divorce, who will work on the marriage, who are absolutely miserable. So they're smaller in percentage, but they do exist. So I'm not going to sit here and demonize women for not having principles. It's not the point. It's just that their default mechanism, their brain is not wired or designed to look towards the future, have principles, and suffer towards a goal. They are looking pragmatically at the situation that they're in and how they feel about that situation, most importantly. And if you don't understand that, you don't understand women. So, you know, a marriage that feels good and feels like forever today could feel differently in a year or two. Now, there are plenty of women, again, who feel really bad and all this, but because of their identity, because of principles, and because of some things, they forgo that pragmatic aspect and try to stick it out. There are some that do that. But why do you want to do that to your partner, right? Why do you want to do that to yourself, too? That's another question, you know? And so the paradigm about cohabitation in the traditional conservative thing, well, it's a lot of times they're cohabitating for the wrong reasons. They don't believe that it's the right thing to do, but they're doing it anyways because they're coming from this religious background and perspective about marriage, which says it's not the right thing to do. And then they're violating that in order to live together for some sort of pragmatic reasons like bill paying or whatever. Or it's usually bill paying, it's usually financial. And that's what, types like Jordan Peterson and some of these others don't seem to understand, is that when people cohabitate, there's usually a financial reason behind it, not so much because that's where most people are. Like a lot of these people who talk about this stuff, in your churches and in your traditional conservative circles are well enough off where they don't think about these things. I do know for a fact, having worked with a variety of people who don't have a lot of money, okay, and I remember when I was one of those people, you live together because it's pragmatic financially. That's why people do it. It's like, well, wait, we're both paying two separate rents and two separate overheads. We could live together and pay one overhead. We plan on being together. And, from a marriage perspective, they're like, well, I have to save for a wedding. I have to save for all this stuff. Obviously, we're going to move in together and save that damn money, right? That's the reason people do it most of the time. Okay. It's not for some ideological reason, but the problem is that pragmatic reason would be the wrong reason to do it, because what you end up in is you end up entrapping yourself. And so if you entrap yourself with somebody in a financial circumstance, especially really early, the likelihood of that relationship working out well, the likelihood of you losing frame, the likelihood of it falling apart is more likely. So I would argue that the reason why cohabitation, marriages, meaning they lived together prior to marriages, didn't work out was because they put financial pressure on the relationship prior to making the vow. That's what I'm going to guess. That's what seems to be the most pragmatic thing. And so in that sense, if you're a traditional conservative person, what's the advice here? If you're a traditional conservative person who wants to get married, wants to have children, believes in God and wants to have that kind of a lifestyle, nothing wrong with it. But there's things you have to do so you're not stupid. Okay? And that's first things is to recognize there's a difference between a contractual marriage and a covenant marriage between you and your wife, right? Contractual is the state. So you want to have prenups and postnups and paperwork for things because it's a business legal contract, right? That needs to be handled properly. All right. Don't mix those two ideas together. That's first thing. But again, that's a whole marriage discussion, a whole nother thing. But the second thing is, yeah, I mean, if you're cohabitating for financial reasons, it's probably the wrong reason because you're probably going to lose frame. All right. So, I'm looking at some of these topics here. What do we got? It's often a difficult decision to cohabitate or not. I myself would prefer not to cohabitate, as Rich Cooper does, to avoid the constant avoidance of the woman trying to dominate the house. Yeah. And then we got, but indeed, for pragmatic financial reasons, it's the option to cohabitate. Yeah, so these are all reasons not to cohabitate, which you're about to learn in this video. All right. And that's what I'm going to get to. Let's see here. I only tried long-term cohabitation once and the outcome was bad enough. I don't want to try it again, but if anyone has the answer for how to do it, it's Paul. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. All right. So let's go into more things. So the reason why it fails from that church, perspective, the data on that, where the marriage is more likely to break up if they cohabitate first, It's because they're excuse me, they're cohabitating for the wrong reasons. That's why, and they're cohabitating in the wrong framework. So the frame is off when they cohabitate. That's the biggest reason. Frame is kind of everything here. All right. And so if you're not if the cohabitation happens in with bad frame, it's not going to work. And that's the same with the marriage. I mean, the biggest statistical predictor of divorce is getting married. All right. So if you get married, you're more likely to get divorced, right? Obviously. Okay. It's not, I can't say marriage leads to divorce any more than I can say cohabitation will lead to a breakup or divorce. It's just cohabitation tends to be a consequence of building a life and a relationship together with for most people, except for some of you who have different ideas, but most people have that idea. And if the frame and stuff is off in the relationship, it's going to break up. Just like marriage is a more likely conclusion for most people, even though some of us understand that maybe that's not the best idea, right? But whether the relationship sticks together or not, or is happy and can be considered successful or not, isn't because, marriage leads to a divorce or breakup. All right. Even though obviously you can't get divorced if you're not married. So that's statistically true. It's because the relationship framework is off, right? It's done in the wrong framework, or bad things happen, things get lost, and next thing you know, it's breaking up, right? Like, so it's not that one leads to the other necessarily. It's having the wrong frame around these things is what really does it. Okay. So here's some wrong reasons to cohabitate. The biggest wrong reason to cohabitate is it's a covert contract. All right. The woman, a lot of times, but sometimes it's the other way, wants more of a commitment, wants more of security, wants more things out of the guy. And sometimes it goes the other way around, but either way. And so it ends up being this push to do the next step. Well, what's the next step in the relationship? The next step is to move in together. And of course, what she's really vying for is maybe a marriage, maybe children, those sorts of things. So when cohabitation is the next step of being, indoctrinated in a relationship that you're not necessarily wanting to be indoctrinated into on either side of it, that's when it's really bad. That's when cohabitation is kind of a covert contract. It's like, well, we're going to live, like, you could be like, well, I don't ever really want to get married again, let's say, because you're divorced. And she's like, yeah, I respect that. I could, and she'll say things like, I don't really care either way, but, if I were to get married, I would want to get married to you, but, whatever. Okay. And then you don't really want to live together either. You want to sort of live your life a certain way. And then she's like, well, it would be better for us financially. It would be better for this. It'd be better for that if we just moved in together instead of just coming over, all the time. Are you coming over here and doing the drive and figuring out where we're going to sleep? Why don't we just sleep in the same bed every night? And, and all these things pragmatically can be true. And it sort of ends up being a covert contract. Really, though, she wants to move things along into a type of a commitment that she envisions, which is not the type of commitment that you envision. Okay. Now, I see this mostly with women doing it to guys. I'm not saying that there aren't cases where guys do this to women. I know it happens all the time. That is, doing something under a covert contract is never a reason to, do anything for that matter. And it's in making a big decision, like combining your life together and living together, because one person is covertly trying to push the relationship in a direction that the other person is not necessarily consenting to or wanting. That is the definition of recipe for a disaster. Okay. Because that is an eventual fight that will happen after you've already combined all your shit. right? Not a good idea, not a good look. Okay. And so that's a reason why not to do it. That's the biggest reason not to do it when it's a covert contract, pushing things together. Other reasons are strictly logistical reasons. All right. Because, for example, it may be better for you financially to move in together. It may be better for you logistically to move in together. But making things easier only exaggerates the problem if you don't have frame and a direction that each person in the relationship is, complying to and looking towards, right? You have a relationship with somebody and there's a direction and a vision you have for your life. If those don't match, then gentlemen, she is not in your frame yet. Okay. And if you move in when she is not in your frame, that is a recipe for all of the things I read in the chats of why the shit isn't going to work. you know, like this, what was it before? I've lost it already. But to avoid what Yan said, to avoid constant, to avoid the woman trying to dominate the house, like shit like that. That shit doesn't happen when you have frame. Okay. You guys with all these bad experiences, I never want to cohabitate again. That's Kate. Kate's a special case, though. I don't mean that in a bad way, Kate. Sounds like I called you retarded. I'm not calling you retarded. All right. Kate's Twitter is hilarious. All right. But she's a special case in that her ideas around these things are not typical, not how most people approach things. But I like this one. Smash a like. Yeah, thank you. Please do. And then here's a question. Are you really committed to someone if you're not cohabitating? How can you build a strong bond when two people are living separate lives? That is a great question from T Diamond. And that's what we're going to answer today. Okay. Because that's a really important question. That's the question that most women will ask. That's a very female typical question. How are we building a relationship together if we live apart? It's a very good question and a very hard one to not just answer, but to really solve for those guys who want to keep things living separate. But I will say the logistical and financial benefits of moving in together cannot be the reason for moving in together, because if you don't have frame, those things become hindrances. You're going to combine your finances and your logistical situation with somebody who is not on the same page with you, and somebody who, as the men who are listening, who are not on your program and who don't perceive you as the authority in the relationship. That's a problem. That is a recipe for absolute disaster. And that is what you run into with, the death by 1,000 cuts, the dominating the household, like all the things that guys are afraid of. You run into that because it's a frame issue. Okay. And so that would be not a reason not to do it. Another reason not to do it would be some of the fantasy reasons people have, like, well, is she the one? Like, this is what it used to be like. And now people talk like this a lot less. Thank God. Thank God for Rollo Tomasi. I feel like he's responsible for eliminating the one bias and making that a mainstream idea that there is no one. Okay, that's a myth, right? But I just kicked my camera. So it got a little shaken there. But yeah, I mean, it's like people have this myth of the one. And then it's like, well, let's move in together and see. They're not saying this logically, but they're like, well, let's see if it works out. In other words, it's kind of like, let's see if she's the one, not we're building a life together and I have frame. We have the same direction. This is the person that is a good candidate, because they have all the qualities. They have been meeting all my conditions and standards. She's good with my boundaries. I think a step of moving in together is good so we can combine our lives and build a life together. That would be a good reason to cohabitate. All right. To find out, I'm not sure if she's the one for me, but let's move in together and we'll see if it works out. It's not a good reason. Okay. That's not really a good reason to move in together. So, all of these bad reasons are reasons why people advise against it. The traditional conservatives seem to think that if you make it impossible to break up, which is never the case because it's always possible to break up, at least if you make it ideologically impossible to break up, then you're going to be forced to work through the marriage. And there's some wisdom in enduring through hardship in a relationship for sure. There's some wisdom for not, just, not just mate switching to the next person because things got a little bit hard. And so there is wisdom there. I'm not going to say that the traditional conservatives don't have wisdom on that because they do. But, ignoring the realities that you do have an out, it's just that out is going to look really bad or it's going to look a little bit better depending on how you set yourself up it's just a recipe for disaster. And again, sticking together is not the measure of success for a relationship. Oh, we stuck it out for 20 years. We don't like each other. We're not happy, but we stuck it out for so many years. We just made it through all of this. That's not success. That's not a successful relationship. If you're listening to me, it's because you want success in your relationships. That means that you're happy most of the time. I mean, sure, that you're happy with your partner. You're happy with your direction that you're going. Both of you guys are. You're in bliss or you're at least in happiness. You may go through bumps in the road. You may go through some trials and tribulations, but you solve those because it's worth it. And then you proceed with more happiness. Okay, a happy relationship after 20 years is success. These people, and unfortunately, you'll never know because people do too much capping and rationalizing after the fact. But you'll hear these people talk about they have a happy, they love their partner, they're happy, you know what I mean? But meanwhile, the sex was not good. Or meanwhile, this, or meanwhile, that. You start picking apart, you start getting details and you realize that sounds fucking miserable. And I would never want to be in that person's shoes telling myself I'm happy to justify my 20-year mistake, right? Like, fuck that. So, no, you want to be happy. And if you want to be happy, you got to do things a little bit differently. Okay. That means not just cohabitating and not just marrying and being a dummy. If you do those things, you're going to do it with awareness. Okay. Now, here's the thing about it. What's the difference between success, moving in together and having that benefit the relationship or be a hindrance? What's the difference? The difference is your authority as a man. Okay. Goes back to responsibility and authority. So if you're combining your life more and you have the frame, that means you're going to be responsible for more. Okay. You're going to have more responsibilities towards that other person. Now, what normally happens is a guy takes on more responsibility to his partner, but then he doesn't have the authority though over her or those decisions that he's taken responsibility for. So he takes on more financial responsibility, for example, by moving a girl in and having to take care of her, but then does not have authority per se over those finances. He takes on more logistical responsibility by bringing a girl into his household or buying a house together with a woman, any of these things, right? But then she ends up having the authority over the house in giving him the honeydew list and telling him what's what and this, then, and that thing. And it's not even a delegated authority. It's just more of a hostile takeover, right? And so these are the problems. It boils down to that. It boils down to frame, really, but we can deduce it even further to authority and responsibility, all right? And so the biggest mistake and the reason why it fails for you guys who have cohabitated together, the reason why it failed was because you took on responsibility of the other person without having authority over it. And it's much easier to separate those authority and responsibility things when you live separate. Okay, so that's the reason people don't like it. That's the reason why, whether he explains it this way or not, that's the reason why, like, Rich Cooper gives advice not to live together, right? And that's fine. It's good advice for him. It's working for him. And for some of you guys, it may work for you. And actually, that's fine. Okay. It works because you're choosing not to take responsibility over certain parts of her life as a man, right? And as a woman, you're choosing not to, have him be responsible for certain parts of your life. So if you're financially independent and you live together, that's right. He's not taking responsibility for your financial situation, but then he doesn't have authority over it. Okay. And that's fine. Some people, that's exactly the way they want it. But, the reason it fails again is because you have a girl who wants to have more security. She wants to feel like there's more security, and not just financial, but more security in the relationship, more security in the commitment. And so she wants the guy to have more, it, let's say in a good polarity relationship. Okay. Not a dysfunctional one like most people. So we'll say it's got good polarity. She wants the guy to have more responsibility over her and authority over her so she can feel safer and feel more secure. And that's where moving in is the benefit to her and benefit to the guy if he has that authority. Okay. And so let's go. It does boil down to that. All right. Now, if you have frame in the relationship, okay, if you have the frame, it means that you have the authority and she defers to you as the authority in the life you guys are building together, and you guys are building together to a life. Moving in is actually an asset, not a detriment. Living together is an asset when you're building a life together and you have frame. It's a detriment if you don't have frame. And it's a detriment if it doesn't fit your goals. Like if you don't want to have the responsibility or authority of your girlfriend's finances, bills, let some of her life decisions, some of her stuff, you just want her to be good to you and you want to be good to her. And then you go live separate and do your separate things. That's what you want, and some people want that. And I'm not going to discredit that. Most people who want that are people who are older, who have been through divorce. And I'm not saying that that's bad. It's the truth. People who are made their own money and have their own stuff and they're in their 50s, they're in their 40s or whatever. They've already been through the divorce machine, guy or girl. They've already been there, done that. They've maybe had kids. They want their freedom. They want their autonomy. They don't want to rely on someone, but they just don't want to be alone. That's okay. That is a non-cohabitation relationship. And for some people that will work. For a lot of women, that's not going to work. Okay. Interesting that you asked what frame is. At 3:00, I'll answer that question for you. So don't get in the weeds here. So most people here are kind of in the know of this, but I have a frame series. And here again, I will just post it in the chat for you. That is the link to the premiere video on my other channel that hopefully will not get banned in the same way. And I got a video coming out. It's going to be about 7 minutes long, action-packed 7 minutes, and it's going to explain frame. Okay. And then from there, I have follow-ons to that series that will get more and more in depth of that. So that's an in-depth question. But frame is, it's basically means that you have a vision for how you see the world. So the basic definition for those that don't know. But again, go watch my video to explain it better and why it's so important. But you have a way you see the world and you have a direction that you're going in your life. Okay. And then that makes you have sort of this idea or way of looking at a relationship and how that relationship fits into your life, and that creates a frame for a relationship. Being in frame means that because she previously, before meeting you, had her own ideas about the world and her own ideas about where she's going in life and what relationships should look like and all that. When she matches your ideas of what things should be, and she gives you authority over making decisions in the relationship, she's in frame. Okay, that's what that means. All right, you have the frame in the relationship when you have the authority. That doesn't mean that you have draconian authority and she has no say or any of that. It just means that that when it comes to final decisions, you're the trusted person to make those decisions. But before she gets in that position of trust, she's going to she's going to match her ideas with your ideas. And at some point in the dating, courting, and early relationship phase, she's matching your ideas of how the world works and for how the direction of relationship, how things should go between you two, what's going to make you guys both happy. She's matching, and then she trusts you, and she, she relinquishes some of her responsibility and some of her authority to you. So you're leading the relationship. That's what that means. That's frame. But I'm talking about it more in depth in that series. Okay. But without that frame, cohabitation's a failure, because what it's going to be is a fight for power. And she's probably going to win that fight. Right. And so it's going to be fight. You're going to fight each other for power in this relationship because you don't have frame. And what that means is that the ideas of how things should go are not in line, they're not in match. Right. So she doesn't trust you. She doesn't trust your decision making because her ideas of how things should go doesn't match your ideas. Right. So like, how can she trust that you're going to make the decisions that will work best for her? She doesn't want to relinquish up that authority to you because social conditioning tells her not to, number one. But even just instinctively and as a human being, and when it comes to interpersonal relationships and communications, she doesn't have the same idea of how relationships should look or how it should go as you do. And so moving in together means she's going to want to have power over you so she can get her needs met. When somebody doesn't trust your authority, then they want to take that authority for themselves. They will have that. They won't give you the authority, in other words, and it's even more of a recipe for a disaster when she's giving you the responsibility for taking care of her, but then not trusting your leadership or authority. And so she's the boss and you're the person with all the responsibility. That is slavery when we, in a marriage sense, in a relationship sense. We talk about male slavery, and some of the more divisive, like manosphere content creators talk about men becoming slaves to women, stuff like that. What do we mean by that? Right. Because it's like, they're not actual slaves. Like, that's not really a fair comparison. They weren't bought and traded, and forced, but they do put themselves in a situation that is unfair to themselves. And they do it unknowingly through ideas and social conditioning, and all kinds of things. Right. And so, like, putting yourself in a position where you're responsible for the bills, responsible for her, responsible for the outcome of how things go in the relationship and the house and everything else, but she won't, respect your decision making, and she'll buy whatever she wants. She'll do whatever she wants with the house. She'll decorate however she wants. She'll, you know what I mean? She'll do all the things. She'll tell you what to do in your own house, to where now you have to banish yourself to like a men's cave or like a garage somewhere in order to have peace and quiet. Like, that's losing frame. All right. That's not good. So let's talk about how to do it right. So if and why it's good. All right. If you have authority already in the relationship, if you have frame, meaning she trusts your decision making, she wants to follow you. When you move in together, you end up with more responsibility, but then you also end up with more authority. This gives you more frame in the relationship by default. right? Like when you have more authority over your partner and more responsibility as a consequence, and she is more, she's volunteering to be there. It's not something divisive or abusive, but she is more reliant on you. Okay. Because she wants to be, of course. And because you want to be in that position, you are now running a dominant, submissive relationship at that point. And not just sexually, but just, you know, in the relationship itself and logistically. And therefore, moving in now makes sense because you have more authority, more responsibility over your partner. Right. And so, if that's the kind of relationship you want, where you want a woman that's submissive to you and defers to your decisions and supports you and all this stuff, moving in is more likely to make that happen. Moving in is an enhancement of this. Okay. Her living separate means that she gets to get into her masculine frame in order to handle her own shit that you're not responsible for and that you don't have authority over. Okay. So that's what happens in that situation. You know what I mean? Is that she has to do the things she needs to do to take care of herself, which means being her own man, essentially, without you around. And then she coexists with you. All right. So you will not have the level of dominance over your partner without combining a lifestyle. You just won't, period. I don't care what anybody says. You can play dominance. I mean, she can be submissive to you when you're around. You can play it in the bedroom, but really, you don't know what that's not necessarily how it's going when you guys are separate. Not necessarily. And so there's got to be some sort of combining of your life, and it's very difficult to do that. Not impossible, but very difficult to do that when you don't cohabitate. When you cohabitate together, it makes that part much easier. All right. It allows you to take care of her more, which is a good thing if it's the partner that you want to be with. Right. I'm with somebody. I want to take care of her more. So I'm happy she lives with me. Okay. So I want to be able to take care of more things. That does mean I have more authority. Okay, of things. And that's the other side of it, the flip side. So yeah, you have more authority over her, which means you have, in theory, more frame, and she's deeper into your frame. Because see, my concept of frame doesn't just involve matching and not matching; it involves depth. Okay, because you can just be matching today, and then tomorrow you get an argument. Now you're out of frame. You see, when you're deep into someone's frame, they don't unmatch as easily. Okay. So there's having, and what I recommend is a model where both people get deep in the frame of the relationship. Okay. So the relationship that is led by the dude is dictating the decisions and the things that are happening, and both partners get more in depth in that. Okay. And so I have a frame series here on this channel. It's in a playlist. You can watch that. But again, I have a new one that's coming out on the new channel that's going to be pretty fire for you guys. That said, okay, so she can get more in depth in your frame and allows you to take care of more. Okay. And this is what you have more in my concept of frame and how I illustrate how it's done. You have more of a couple of things. You have increased idealized isolation. So idealized isolation is a concept where when you're in a relationship with somebody, you have you and her and what you and her experience, okay, and your thoughts, beliefs, behaviors together. And then there's kind of a wall that you develop, and then there's everybody else on the outside. If you're in a healthy relationship that's going to be long lasting, there has to be a certain amount of things that you just don't share with everybody. Not your parents, not your friends, not her friends. Okay. Certain things stay between you and her. Experiences, thoughts, ideas, conversations, those sorts of things, secrets. And really, there's certain things that are private and that are between you and her, and that formulate how you two see the world and puts you two on the same team and same side of the table against everything else that's going on in the world. So when this person is doing something weird over here, that's, they have this, a friend of yours or a friend of hers has some goofy relationship where like they cheat on each other, or they're toxic towards each other, they fight all the time. That's on the outside. That doesn't influence us. When some, content creator or some news person or some, whatever is giving advice, then that advice doesn't match your relationship, doesn't work, then that stays in the outside. You see, all of these other influences are on the outside. It's you two working together. That's you're in frame, but that's where that's idealized isolation. All right. And so idealized isolation means that it's where you see it's a bubble between you two. This actually is a pickup concept. So it starts in the pickup thing, right? Where you're just you and her, and then everybody else is out there. But it happens up here. It happens idealistically in that relationship too. And that idealized isolation happens more so when you share a bed together, when you're under the same roof, and that is more of that feeling and measure of building this life together. You're isolating more and more, further and further the outside world, and having it more and more just be about you two. That is how you get deeper into frame and how you strengthen a relationship. Now, if you do that and you don't have the power, you don't have the authority, and you don't have frame, well, that's not going to work. You know what I mean? You won't idealize, isolate. She'll just be sort of controlling you and everything in the situation. Living together in the same roof is just a recipe for her to, be in charge of you, and take away. You lose your freedoms, and you'll lose a lot of your freedoms and a lot of your direction without any benefit. That's not good. But in frame, okay, with idealized isolation as a part of that, moving in together allows this to grow and allows you to grow deeper into frame. All right. Won't happen if you don't have authority. Won't happen if she doesn't see you as, the person she wants to follow. But, when she does, it works out for the better. Okay. Now, the traditional conservatives have this idea that, well, if you say the magic words in marriage, then that creates all this. No, it doesn't. Okay. This happens because you have the skills to do it. I have a program for a year that helps guys develop these skills and these relationship skills so they can pick the right partner and have that kind, the kind of relationship they want, whether it's non-cohabitating, cohabitating, dating a bunch of women, or having one partner and doing monogamy even, right? Or doing some, harem form of it, right? But in any of those cases, there's a level of idealized isolation, and it's where it's just you and her, and how to do that appropriately and how to do that in a healthy and good way. That's a skill set. That's something I cover in that year-long program with all that course material in our calls and helping dudes along. Right. So yeah. Back to my notes here. So that's one aspect. Now, the other aspect of frame, if you remember, was kind of the emotional buy-in aspect. So this is the, what I call the, that's the neurochemical or emotional, attachment or experience. I call it neurochemical attachment because it's not just, the emotions are based on these neurochemicals that cause you to be attached to somebody. Right. So the more attached she is to you, the more frame you have, the more, and this is what desire is about. When a girl is, when we talk about these binary ideas that are easy to understand for guys, right? Like, the alpha desire or the beta transactional relationship, right? Well, it's assuming the transactional relationship is just having these needs met, that she wants to meet. Okay. And what the alpha desire is saying, regardless of these needs, there's these emotions and these feelings that she has for that other person, right? Feelings of attachment, feelings of desire, feelings of wanting the other person, and feelings of not wanting to be away from the other person. All right. So that's the balance. Being in a, we'll say, alpha relationship where she is based in desire does not necessarily mean that transactional needs are not being met. Okay. Transactional needs are usually being met in those things too, if it's going to last. but it means that whether those are being met or not, the desire is there and holds on. Now she starts to lose those transactional needs. Maybe some of that desire starts to erode away, but it's a process. It's not just, oh, my bills aren't getting paid the way I want, or I got to change my lifestyle a little bit, I'm out of here, right? It's not just like that. And so these emotions are there. Well, how do you create those emotions of attachment? It's through good experiences, it's through good sex, and it's through closeness, physical closeness, right? If you live together and she's in your frame, what are you having more of? You're having more sex. You're sleeping together. She's close to you every single night. All right. That creates a higher neurochemical attachment. All right. So part of frame, if you follow my 4 components of it, you have idealization as a component, and you have attachment, or really the neurochemical attachment, right? Or emotional attachment as a component. And the higher and more intense those emotional experiences are, and the more frequent they are, the more attached she becomes to you. If you live together, or if she's staying over a lot, you increase that attachment, right? And it can, if she's in your frame and she's attracted to you, sex doesn't go down when you move in together. Sex goes up. All right. In every situation I've lived with somebody, the sex went up. It went from multiple times a week to every day, at least once. There's a lot of sex in my world, right? And it's because I like it, and because my partner tends to like it, and because we like it with each other. That's how it goes. So this idea that, I've been and seen the situation a lot, though, more often than not, where the marriage, the commitment, especially the living together, the sex goes down. Well, the sex goes down because frame is not being maintained and desire is not being continually built in the right way. So to handle it on easy mode, sure, live separate, because then that creates dread when you're not there. And then she wants to get her desires met, and she sees you as the person, and she meets with you, and then you guys have sex, right? So that time away creates more dread, creates more of a worry of losing you, creates less security for her. And that less security can keep the sex going, keep it high for most relationships. If you take my year-long program and you have positive dread, as Plumber mentioned down here, exactly. What happens is the sex goes up, doesn't go down. Okay. And when you move in together, the experience gets more intense, it gets better, and it gets more frequent. You may have periods of time of less frequency because somebody's not feeling well or whatever it may be. Okay. But that's only small periods. At a net, if you look at the, over time, 3 months, 6 months, a year time period, you're going to have more. If you have the frame, even if it's 10 years into the relationship, you're going to have more frequent and better sex in, let's say, if given 3 month, 6 month period, right? Living together than you are or would have living apart. All right. Because you know how to build the desire, but that's a skill set. It's another skill set. That's something I cover in a year-long program. There's a reason why the damn program's a year long. It's a skill set. You have to know how to build desire, both sexually and both in and out of the bedroom, and then handling conflicts and handling things so that things don't erode away on your relationship outside the bedroom, and keeping that emotional intensity high. It is more work, and it is, more, it takes more skill. I won't say more difficult, because when you have the skill, it's actually less difficult when she lives with you. When she's there every day, it's less difficult when you have the skill. Now, if you don't have the skill, it's more difficult to keep sex going, keep things high, and keep things good, right? And so if you've experienced that, where you had a woman move in with you and the sex went down and you found keeping it together was more difficult, you have a skill gap in terms of seduction, in terms of frame. It's not an SMV gap, okay? Because you could be higher SMV than I am. All right. You could have all the money and all the looks and all the things in the world, but your seduction skills and your skills in handling the relationship need to be, is what it all hinges on. You know what I mean? Because once a girl gets in relationship with you and comfortable, you could be the most alpha dude in the world. Once she's in some level of comfort with you, it doesn't matter as much. That's not, you know what I mean? Like, it matters, but it doesn't. You know what I mean? It comes down more to skill at that point. You know, the deferring mechanism is your skill in seduction and in holding frame and in handling your relationship. You know, because again, like, you could be the best guy in the world for her, and that'll make her in the beginning want you and want to get you. And once she gets you, what happens? She's got you now. So the fact that you're in any kind of commitment with her, and I don't care what guys want to say and how they want to cap. If you're in any kind of commitment with her and not just fucking a new bitch every fucking 3 days, okay, which I don't recommend you do that, by the way, but if that's the case, you are, through your behavior, letting her know that she is pragmatically a high enough choice for her to deserve and enjoy your SMV. Let me say that again, because a lot of people don't fucking get it. All right. Including friends of mine, including people who give advice out. Your SMV is important. All right. Because that's your objective reality of your value. But that said, once you get her and she has you in some level of commitment, your SMV doesn't matter as much as your fucking skill. The reason why is because pragmatically, if you picked her to be in a level of commitment with you, whether it's cohabitating or not, the message to her is that she's good enough to be there. You just raised her up. She could be here. She could be a 4 and you could be a 12. Okay. And if you're committed and dedicated to her, you might end up with a bitchy 4 on your hands. Did I blow your mind yet? Why though? Why? Because in the experience, you just brought her, you let her know either you're not high enough. And this is the thing. If she doesn't think highly of herself, she's going to think you're less by committing to her, or she's going to think that you're high enough option, but that she is at least high enough for you to make that move. You see, she's in your frame, whether you like it or not, in some ways. And that's going to be based on your behavior and decisions. So once you give the commitment away to any degree, you know, that's any degree at all. Okay. You cannot avoid the fact that she is going she's going to be elevated into believing that she deserves to be there. That's okay though. That's not a bad thing. It's just, that's the facts. It's not bad or good. It's just a fact. And so the key is you pick somebody that's good and that's a good person to be committed to. That's the first thing. You pick the right partner, because you could pick the wrong partner and her mind, her monkey brain, is going to register she's good enough to be there. And maybe she might not be. You know what I mean? So that's why you don't pick the wrong partner. You pick a partner with some potential. You know, you pick a partner who's a good match, because who deserves to be, who actually deserves it, we'll say, not somebody who really doesn't, but you're going to try to elevate her, you know, because she's demonstrated attraction in the beginning. You know, she'll only demonstrate that attraction when there's dread. Now you have a recipe for disaster if you're not holding the relationship with positive dread and holding the relationship with frame and skills. So again, you could be Jeff Bezos, you know, with, you know, but who you could have Jeff Bezos money and success, but look like a Calvin Klein model, you know, and be like the best dude to degree, you know, and you pick some hot girl to be with you, but who you could change for any other hot girl. Doesn't matter. She thinks she's special because she's in that commitment with you. And that's the reality. And she should think she's special to a degree. So I'm not saying it's bad, but because of that, your SMV now is not as much of a factor. When she first met you and she's like dating guys who are high and drunk and playing video games all day, and then she gets with you who's like the man, okay? Right? It's just using extreme example here. She's gonna think you're the man while you're dating, right? But once you're in that commitment, you're her boyfriend now. You're her husband now. You see how that works? And you can't help that. That is a reality. The only way you help that is not getting a commitment and blah blah, which is fine. Don't. But what'll happen is then you'll probably lose her after a point too. You'll be that really high S&V guy that she can't build a life with. Now, the other aspect of things is women want to build a life with a guy at some point. Maybe they don't care about that as much when they're 21. Maybe they don't care about that much either after they've been through bad relationships and they're, let's say, 42 years old, or 38 years old or something, right? But pending bad experiences or pending being so young and high on their own SMV that they're not thinking about it, most women want to be building a life with a guy that they see as someone who will elevate their lifestyle. Okay. That's a guy who's higher SMV than them. That's hypergamy, right? They want to build a life with that guy. They're only going to put up with so much of a non-commitment before they wash their hands of it and move on somewhere else. This is why plates move on. All right. Guys are like, how do I keep this plate? Some of the times the answer is you don't. If you're not providing for her the opportunity to advance her life after a point, you might be high SMV. She might like you. She might like the sex. She might like the time she's having. She may come back around several boyfriends later and revisit you a few times in her lifetime. That's fine too. But you're going to lose her. You're not going to keep her. It's a catch and release program if she is a plate. If you don't offer her what she needs to advance her goals, life in the form of security, and this is what's called legacy needs, right? After a point, she's going to move on, And so women generally at some point, not all women, but a lot of women, they want to know that they can sort of build with somebody, and that they could have a legacy with somebody, meaning they grow old with that person. Women are generally do not as well as men in their old age alone. Okay. So they want to be with somebody that's going to be a partner to them, at a point, whether it's a partner to them while they raise the family, whether it's a partner to them, after the family's already raised and they're moving into the next phases of life. When they're done with their party years, they usually want to build with somebody. You're not going to survive too long with most girls with a non-cohabitating relationship. After a point, they're probably going to move on. That's most girls. Not all women, okay, but most women. So if you're trying to do a non-cohabitation thing and that's really your goal, you got to ask yourself why that is. And if it's because of, you don't want to deal with certain things with a woman, this, that, and the other, that's fine. But understand that you're not going to have depth and frame, and you're probably going to lose that person most of the time. Now, there are some women, usually late 30s and on. Kate's one of them. She, Kate in the comments here, right? Where she's been there, done that. She's not interested in having that building situation. She would rather have her own money, her own stuff, her own authority over her own life, her own responsibility, and then just have a partner to kind of coexist with. There are women who do want that. That's their goals. They're fewer in number. And so your selection is going to be lower. And so if you want this partner, it's going to be with you the next, so many years, right? Or for a long time, but that isn't going to live with you. That's what you have to find. And you have to hold that frame. And there's a lot of girls who might fall in that frame. All right. But after a point, though, there's only so much depth. Living together allows them to have more depth. It allows them to isolate and allows them to be closer to you more frequently and have more sex with you more frequently, which means their emotional buy-in is much higher. It allows you to have more authority over their life if you're doing it properly. You have no say about whether or not she's going out on girls' night, where she's going, what she's doing, if you don't live together. You may think you do, but she could be gone and not telling you the truth. You know what I'm saying? And that's the reality. And people lie a lot. And so living together, there's much more transparency. If you guys should be on my email list and newsletter, it's free information. In there, I have a whole guideline to prevent cheating. And if you go through that, cheating prevention guideline, it talks about psychology of cheating. Outside of her desire, the next biggest thing to prevent her from mate switching or cheating is transparency. Living together, you have more transparency. Now, that means that she has more transparency too. She can see what you're doing, which is why I recommend you don't lie to women, and you do, you always say what you do and who you are, but she can see more of that. All right. And so the key is to this is frame. It's all comes down to frame. When a girl is living with you, you have frame and you have authority over what goes on. This doesn't mean that she never makes any decisions. Of course she does, but they're delegated. Maybe how the kitchen is organized and how, not to sound, whatever, but if she's somebody who's usually the person to be in, do that stuff, right? How something's organized, how the, how the basement's organized, how your living room's decorated, you have a say and veto power. Maybe you delegate all that to her. Maybe you delegate plants and gardening to her. That's what I do in my house, and that's okay. That doesn't mean you don't have authority. It means that you've delegated responsibility and authority to that person. You still have final authority as the man who's holding frame in your relationship. And that's fine. So it doesn't mean that she's a prisoner or slave in the household. Okay. It just means that she has, you have that authority. You have that responsibility. And with that, being together, you have your time apart too. I recommend you're not moving into a one-room apartment, at least not for very long, right? You live in a place with some space where she has some of her, she can go to her corner of the house if she wants to have some of her time, and you can go to your corner of the house for some of your time. You have some space, okay? But by cohabitating, by coexisting, by sleeping together every night, you're building together. You're building, you're building your legacy together. You're making financial decisions together. You're making life decisions together. For those of you who want that kind of relationship, it doesn't make sense to not live together. It would be stupid to not live together, I would argue. All right. So the thing is, it's not living together that's the problem with your relationships. It's not the living together that caused you the issue. What caused you the issue was your lack of frame and your lack of selection. Because think about this too. You're going to build a life of somebody. For those of you who think you're going to build a life of somebody that you're not going to live with. So you're going to build this life with somebody with all these bad habits and behaviors that you can't live with under the same roof, or you're worried about finding out about their habits, behaviors, and things that they do. You know what I mean? Like, that's not having frame. And that's not selecting the right partner. If all of her, weird bad habits that you would find out about moving in together would cause you to break the relationship, then aren't you just in La La Land right now with that person? Aren't you just in fantasy land then? You see, you should want to know all about what her habits, thoughts, beliefs, and ways of being are that would show themselves in a situation where you're together under the same roof, right? And that way, you can sort of verify if it's the right person. Not that that's the goal of living together, but that's something that you would verify or not verify. And the approach of the relationship would be, having her in your frame to begin with. You see, if you don't want to find out these things, you don't even want to know, or you're not, whatever, she's going to live over there. You're really just looking for somebody to touch your wiener. and to make you feel good, and then to go away, which is fine. Fine, but don't fool yourself into thinking that that's a relationship. That's just somebody who touches your wiener and then goes back to her house. All right. And so if you're actually building something, you know what I mean? You're going to want to know this person inside and out, because without that, it's kind of hard to have frame with that person, right? If she's not willing to, reveal who she really is through habits and through behaviors that you would notice living together, then that's probably a problem. You see, the problem you guys ran into, again, it's a frame problem. You didn't have the relationship frame and the skills to keep the desire up, the sex up, to keep things going, which is actually more effortless living together, but you didn't have the skills to make it more effortless. You lose it, you lose your autonomy by moving in with a girl. So if you don't have the skill, I don't recommend you move her in, but if you want to develop the skill, if you want to, I recommend that you'd actually do that. If you want a life together with somebody, if you want to build a life and build a future with a person or even a harem of girls, I recommend, depending on your structure, talking about harems, even if it's a soft harem, at least one of those girls sleeps with you every night. That's what it comes down to, is who she's sleeping with at night. You, herself. Do you know it's herself? Right? She experimenting with her neighbor. You don't know. All right, so let's go into some questions, but that's the thing. I hope that answers the question. I mean, it's kind of hard. Like what we're getting into is frame skills, but what it boils down to is you have frame in the relationship. You know how to create good experiences, good sex. You pick a good partner. You balance your life out. She sees you as the authority in the relationship in your guys' life, which means she's not making big decisions on her own. She's, but you're also taking care of things and you're responsible for things. Then it's a good cohabitating relationship. You're going to live together in the same roof because it's just better that way. It's obviously better for raising kids. Okay, we know that if there's kids involved. But it's better for maintaining frame in the relationship because you isolate yourselves as a couple more from the rest of the world. She's less in her masculine frame when she's by herself, more in your frame all the time because she's under the same roof. You balance out, there's still dread. If you're high SMV and you're busy with life, you're leaving, you're doing stuff, you're making yourself better. She doesn't lose dread. That's not something that happens, okay, when you're maintaining frame, okay? You don't lose sex, you don't lose frequency, you don't lose intensity because you know how to do sex the right way where it creates, she doesn't lose that interest, right? Keep kicking my camera stand on accident underneath my desk. But anyway, so you do all these things right, it makes your relationship better, but it boils down to frame and it boils down to your authority. Where you guys have failed, or it didn't work, is you picked the wrong person, you moved in for the wrong reasons, you either didn't have frame to begin with or you thought you did but didn't. And as soon as you moved in, you took on more responsibility, but you didn't have authority over those things. And so the key is that you have authority over all the things that you would have authority over by the time she moves in, before you move in, where she sees you as someone who at least could be that authority for those things. And she's demonstrating that. And then you guys move in together. All right. You're not taking financial responsibility for somebody, for example, with no authority and she doesn't care about it and whatever. Right. And so, yeah, let's go through some quick questions and then we'll close off today. Thanks, man. Well, I'm glad that you like it. I'm glad that you're finding good use in this stuff. Let's say, where do we got here? Where were you back in the late 90s? Thanks, brother. You're on fire today. Now that I've seen both sides of having frame and having a wayward wife who had zero direction but refused to get on my program. And that's what it boils down to. She's on your program. It's great. You know what? I woke up this morning. My girl actually woke up before me. She made me coffee. She made me breakfast. She's helping out around here. I'm doing things here to make us money. We're going to figure out what we're doing this afternoon. You see what I mean? Like, it's better, you know, than her living by herself. Maybe she went to work this morning. I would rather wake up with her next to me and us doing stuff together. It's just better. But it only works if she's in frame, right? It doesn't work if she's doesn't respect me, I have no authority in her life. That wouldn't work then. You know, we got to be on the same program, right? I hear the vacuum going right now, in fact, as I do this, because she's doing her part to be a contributor to the household, because she's being a good girlfriend. Like, that's how it goes, right? And we cohabitate. Like, that's what happens. I didn't get a honeydew list from her this weekend. No, I do things too. I cook a lot, actually. I enjoy cooking, you know, at night, stuff like that. So it's something we both do. But like, it doesn't matter how you break up these responsibilities. What matters is you're in the position of authority. You have frame. It's been a year, okay, with the same person now. I've done this before with other women for more than that amount of time. And, you know, sex never goes down. It's always gone up. All right. Done in the right way. When I was younger, obviously I experienced where it did go down and wasn't good. But anyways, I know that certainty is an attraction killer. Okay. There is no certainty in life. And when you're achieving things as a high SMV guy, there's enough instability where you don't have to artificially create dread. So that's the other thing. Like, my life right now there's a lot of uncertainty all the time. Now, there's some uncertainty because I still do stuff in the military. I leave, I could go stuff, but I'm also building a business. There's also traveling. There's stuff I'm doing to try to build my life and to build my dent in the universe and legacy. And because of all that stuff, I'm not doing the same thing every day with this boring life. So there is no certainty living in the same house with me. If you have a lifestyle which is very like predictable, you may want to rethink that. You know what I mean? Not just for yourself, and not just for her, but for yourself. You know, are you building and going in a direction? You know what I mean? And so, yeah, you don't want to have this predictable lifestyle, but maybe that means you need to expand your social circles. Maybe that means that you need to expand some of your interests and hobbies that'll take you outside of a predictable schedule and framework. Maybe you're a slave to a job and you need to not be a slave to it, but instead have that job work for you as hard as you work for it. Right. So tells me there's a lot of lifestyle changes that need to happen if there's too much certainty in your relationship. High SMV guys don't have that certainty. They're comfortable with uncertainty. Okay. But however, how do you maintain this while in it? Well, I just told you the answer. So that's how you don't have to do anything artificially. When you're killing it in life and you're challenging yourself, you're getting outside of your comfort zone. You're doing so many different things that it makes for an unpredictable lifestyle. Now, you shouldn't be so unpredictable that like she has no security whatsoever. That's not going to happen, right? But can you predict month to month, what you're going to be doing every weekend? And if it's likely the same thing, drinking with the same losers at the same bars, for example, while you go to the same job every day, you're probably not attacking life the way that you need to. So the answer is that if you're attacking, and you may already be doing this and attacking life in a good way and just had the question, which is fine too. But if you're attacking life, in a way that's going to make that dent, increase your value to yourself, to the world, and really make for the kind of life that other people are too lazy to want to, live, then you're high market value already. So a girl who lives with you, a girl is in your frame, she is dealing with unpredictability no matter what. And that unpredictability of life is enough to create the dread. you know? So high SMV guys are desirable by other women by default, and they're creating stuff in life. They don't have to do anything special about that other than take care of themselves and attack life. You know what I mean? And so her being around you more often, here's what I found. I found this, and this is maybe the place that you need to think about, or you guys need to get yourself here. I found that by not living with me, even the most secure women out there had high dread because my life was so on my own mental point of origin and open for change and unpredictability because of my lifestyle, my diverse social life, my diverse interest and hobbies, my traveling schedules, my chosen professions. And even as I got more and more in my net worth and, monetary value, where, that was even high, all of those things as things grew in my sexual market value, when I became the person that could offer everything to a chick, that person's also an unpredictable person in their lifestyle to some degree. That always created dread, and that created high dread in a lot of cases where I'd have to manage that for a girl. And it became easier to manage by moving her in with me, and having her be closer to me and let her know, like, hey, even though I'm traveling, I'm going to a place where there's going to be other women who are going to want to have sex with me, and you're not going to be there. You're still the person I'm coming home to. Even if I'm not breaking boundaries or trying to have sex with other women outside of the relationship, right? Like, even if I'm not trying to have side bitches or whatever, she still has dread. When you're a high value man who looks good and who makes her have these great experiences in the bedroom, she can't help but wonder, well, is she going to create that great experience for somebody else now that he's out of town doing some military training, or now that he's out of town, meeting up with and networking with people for his job, or doing a group meetup, for his Apex mindset group or whatever, right? Or for you, maybe a business trip, or for you, maybe a car show or a golf trip or something that you're doing with somebody, or some people, she's going to be like, I need to come with you. Like, it's not because you're trying to create insecurity by doing the wrong things. That's a mistake. But just by living a diverse and rich lifestyle, man, like, even if she needs to be around you more just so she can feel secure enough. You know what I mean? That's even if she's the most secure chick, that's what she's going to want. Right. And so that's what you got to create that life. You know what I'm saying? Um, yeah, I'm not going to talk about other content creators on my show, guys, in a bad way like that. I didn't talk about Jordan Peterson or Rich Cooper in a bad way. I actually, in some ways, agree with both of their perspectives. So it does depend on your situation, but I'm offering an alternative view for those of you guys who want to kind of build a life with a chick and have more of a committed relationship, with somebody. Yep, it does. Let's see. So in my case, she made a 20-year-old girl. She made a couple 20-year-old girlfriends, and they convinced her she could still compete like they do at 35. Wow, what a dumb bitch. And I never had the opportunity to meet the friends and game them. Well, there's obviously a problem with her frame to begin with, but there's obviously a lot of problems with her and maybe her mental framework and stuff that you probably just didn't recognize prior to that relationship. If she's trying to relive her 20s at 35, you know what I mean? Yeah. So going through things. I have a feeling that Kate got tired of some ugly dude's ugly ass home decor. I leave a lot of the decorating. I got like input. I have the authority over it, but I let my chick tell me what she likes because her taste is good and it works for me. It's less work I have to do, and something she enjoys doing when it comes to decor. All right. Well, sure, but then why? I mean, why is she anything more than casual anyways? I wouldn't want to be having somebody move in with me who's a huge pain in the ass either. If my girl is a huge pain in the ass, then I'm not going to want her to cohabitate with me either. So I don't disagree there, but I would argue to find maybe a better chick who's not such a pain in the ass, right? I mean, that's what I would argue with if you want that lifestyle. If you want to put up with a pain in the ass, man, you can put up with that too. It's up to you, you know. Um, yeah. Let's see. Looking screening for questions. All right. Well, anyways, great show. And thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense. Frame is the answer to everything. And again, at 3:00 today, jump over to the new channel. It's a very short but action-packed video with there'll be more parts to it going over there. Subscribe to that channel, everything else. That's the channel I'm going to try to build a wider audience with. But yeah, you guys are kind of like my circle of underground people who are interested in good information. And I'm glad that you came along for the ride. Cohabitation isn't the problem. Okay. It's your lifestyle and your frame. If it doesn't fit your lifestyle and doesn't fit your goals to have a girl cohabitate with you, by all means, don't let her push you into that. Follow that advice of not cohabitating. Okay. But if it does fit your lifestyle, fit your goals, and you want a girl to be more into your frame, deeper into your frame, and to be more of a complement of your life to your life, right? Then I would say moving in is a good decision. You just have to do it the right way. It's all about authority and responsibility, where you're not giving up authority that for things that you're taking responsibility for, and where you're having that frame in your relationship. If the frame is there, cohabitation is better. It's better than having her not live with you. If the frame is not quite there, or you're not sure how to maintain that in a cohabitating situation, then it's not going to work well for you. I suggest to learn more. Obviously, you're on my channel and other things, but make sure you're getting the free stuff over on the newsletter. Okay. If you're not subscribed to that, click that link in the show notes. And also make sure that, maybe you're a candidate for a year-long program so you can learn all the seduction skills and all the skills necessary to have any kind of relationship you want with, the type of girl you'd want to be with. So if you want that program is now open again. Links in the description. Click the link, schedule a free consult. Thanks again.